think we can start, huh? Thank you, Jen, for introducing. You speak my heart. Open source is very important, and so thanks to open source, I learned a lot of coding, basically everything about coding, and WebdriverIO was a pretty important tool to that. I was able there to kind of like learn a lot about Node.js and everything around. Never mind. Today, we're going to start testing our Vue application that we just built over the last days. And we do that with WebdriverIO and Sauce Labs. So the way we started is basically, I hope you're all on the for-start branch, which is our starting point. That is only important because this adds this little thing to the project, which means it's an ESM project. Since the whole project is an ESM project, this will make it also on the NPM side an ESM project, which is important to make it easier to set up. One important thing to start, I already installed the dependencies, is for you to basically get started with this simple command, which is WDIO init, and then the npm init, WDIO at latest, and then dot. This is all you need. And what this does is basically it will start a configuration wizard for you, which will guide you through a bunch of questions. And we particularly intentionally chose to do that route with you because we wanted to show you how easy it is to get started with automation testing, especially on Sauce Labs. So running this wizard, it will install the CLI and will guide you through some questions. It will detect your project, hopefully. In this case, it's on this directory for me. And then it asks you what kind of things you want to do. If you want to do end-to-end testing, component or unit testing, desktop testing on Electron application, desktop testing on macOS application, VS Code extension testing. But today we do end-to-end testing of web and mobile applications. We want to do this in the cloud using Sauce Labs. Thanks to Sauce for sponsoring. We want to do, we can choose between web and mobile. For this workshop, we're going to pick web. For now, in terms of browsers, we start with Chrome and then we expand at the end of the workshop to add more browsers. The rest is the same. Make sure you have your Sauce username and your Sauce access key stored in your environment. And WebdriverIO cannot read it yet from your .env file, so you need to export it into your environment. We've seen a couple of requests in the Discord. Just export it in your environment and it should work, hopefully. I will show you that in a second. We use the US data center for now. And the rest is basically the same. You choose between 3 frameworks. We keep Mocker, it detects TypeScript, so we go along with that. We can auto-generate some test files. That is all fine. We don't need any page objects for now. We use the spec reporter, no plugins, and it also automatically detects that you're using a Nuxt framework, and it also sees that you want to use Sauce, so it adds some plugins for that, and you just press save for installing all these services. So what this does is now it creates a config file for WebdriverIO that already is set up to be connected to Sauce Labs. And it creates a test file for you to run your tests in. So it gives us a good start. So after a second, it has generated all the code. We can look into our project. We see now a new WDIO conf, where we see that these environment variables are now needed in order to authenticate with Sauce Labs. You see the region is set, the specs, we have one browser, and most importantly, we have now the Nuxt and the Sauce service set up. We can also see that we have a test file, just a basic test file that doesn't test our app, but that is okay. So in order to authenticate with Sauce Labs, you export your Sauce username and for me, it's CB minus onboarding. So that should be there. So you can verify that by printing it out. And there we go. And then you can already start testing. So this will now connect with Sauce Labs and we'll test the example file that we have there. So we just do this for now to see if everything works. You see that WebDriver is connecting with Sauce Labs using your credentials. And it runs some stuff. And at the end, we should see a passing test. It gives us a URL. We can check it out. If the page loads. While the page is loading, we currently haven't tested our application because that's just a demo file. In order to test our application, all we need to do is change this command to be a slash. WebDriver has automatically detected that you're running a Nuxt application, and it automatically starts your application when the tests are being kicked off. And it modifies your environment so that all you need to do to enter your application is with a starting slash. And then to get started, we will just, let me actually run. Right. Now we can see the test. You can see here the browser has been executed on a Sauce Labs VM. And it's not our application, but you see that something has happened. So let me just split the screen here. Let me just go in our application. Localhost 3000. So let's just verify that we do something with our application here. So we have this nice heading that we can test. We can just check for that. It's a link. It has this text. That's all we need to know to fetch the element. So in this case, we can say expect that an element that has this text, and link that has this text is denounced in this selector, starting with an equal sign, to be present. So that should be our first test. My, let's say, Vue Forge application should open. And that's all we need to get started. So we can quit that because WebDriver automatically starts the server for us. So we run the test again, and this time it should actually connect to our application. You see that Nuxt is ready on localhost 3000. And Sauce is now using Sauce Connect, which is a binary that has been automatically set up for you that allows the VM that is in the Sauce data center to connect with your environment, with your machine, and access the web app that you have locally. So everything passed. My test passed, which is great. And we can now see that Sauce Labs has accessed the application that we are running locally on our machine. And our test has been successful. And we can start adding more stuff, which is cool. So actually, let's do this again. I need an application to let's open the application then. So in our prompts, we want you to register a user. The register sign is on this website. We see that we have an email, password, and a confirm password page with a sign up button, and that's all about it. So we want to make sure that this form works properly. So the way I would get started here is to identify these elements. WebDriver has a bunch of ways how you can fetch elements from a web app. I would recommend the best way to do it is using the accessibility selector or the accessibility name. All you need to do to find out what's the accessibility name of that element is by going to the accessibility tab in your Chrome DevTools. It's very handy. You see that here the accessibility name is email. just because, what good question. It's because the label that is connected to it has the text email. So the label that is next to the input, or the label that is wrapping, has the text that is email. So that makes these the input accessibility name email too. So we can go along and find out what the accessibility names of those are. In this case, for the password is password, and that will probably be confirmed password. And then we can already go ahead and write our tests. That's right. So let's start with a simple example. What happens if we go on the page, press on the sign up
Hey, Christian,
button?
can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Why are you choosing to use an accessibility locator versus something like a unique test locator?
A unique test locator is great too, if they are available. If your application has a unique test identifier, or if your application sets unique test identifier, use them for sure. They're probably less likely to change at all. If you don't have that, I recommend the accessibility selector because it's something that a user interacts with, especially if they are on a accessibility device that has accessibility enabled. And you can make sure you automatically test if those users also be able to navigate through your website. And making your website more accessible, if you need it for testing, is also always a good thing. So I will always fall back to using the accessibility selector. If you have a test ID, definitely a good way to use those as well.
That's awesome. Makes total sense. And can you quickly show how we would add a unique identifier to our application? Just because with end-to-end testing, it's always sometimes can be really difficult. And in this app, we don't have any unique identifier. So maybe
That's
just
right.
show the developers how, if they wanted to make their app more testable, it's really easy.
Yeah, the way to do that is using data attributes on your elements. So data attributes are really handy to give any element, any attribute you like without having any impact on the visual or functional side of the app. So you can do data test ID. I see a lot of that. And you can say, in this case, email. And now I can, fetch this element in the same way by using a CSS selector now. Makes it super easy. But again, I will fall back on accessibility for this workshop because it makes also the test much easier to write and read. Cool. For the first scenario, we will just go on the page, press the sign up button, and expect this message to show up. Again, this is an element that has a specific text, so we can use that as the text as an accessibility selector as well, and we can just start running our test. Actually, yeah, why not? Let's start with that. So it should, in our first test, it should error due to missing fields. ChatGPT is helping me out, or GPT-4 is helping me out here. Almost there. I take that. You go on the register page, and then I click on the button. So this is the sign up button. It has, let me just store this here for now. It has probably an accessibility selector called sign up in uppercase. So all you need to do now is you start with area / and now you put in the accessibility name, which is sign up in uppercase. And you click that, and then I stored this text to me, which is the accessibility name for the pop-up that will show up, and we expect that to be present. So this is our first test. So we can now run this on Sauce Labs. I would just do it, and while this is running, in order to faster iterate, I would recommend to always create a config file for local testing and for your cloud tests, where you can scale up your environment. And you have that one WDIO config that you use for shared configuration that usually never change. So let me go ahead and create a sauce.conf.ts. And I will copy first everything over, but I will remove the common things that we don't need. We want to have the user. Those are all sauce information, so we want to keep it here. The spec don't change. The exclude doesn't change. We want to keep max instances and the capabilities because later we want to scale this up. We want to run more tests on more browsers and environments. The rest stays almost the same. Services, we keep both. And the rest is the same. Those are all common. So we keep our sauce config very small. Basically, only keep the information that are important for running on sauce, and we do the same for local testing. So we'll create a WDO config, WDO local.conf.ds, and do the same trick. We can remove all the sauce stuff. We can keep the specs. Let's keep max instances and capabilities to make sure we only run on one browser for local. So for the services, we don't need the sauce service when we test locally because we don't need to connect to sauce. And the rest stays the same. So in order to inherit from a shared config, all we need to do is to import the config as shared config from our base. It's not shared yet, it's just that. And so we can add these things in. We do the same for the sauce one. So we import it and we expand it into our existing config. And then in our package.json, we create basically two commands, one for testing local and one for testing sauce. Local and sauce. That's great. So you can see now that our test was failing because the element wasn't there, but we can debug this now locally. So we can run this locally. And you should see that it's still connecting to sauce because we probably point to the wrong file, huh? Oh, yeah, we have to clean up our main config and remove the stuff that is already used in the others. So this, we can remove capabilities and we can remove services because all these information are defined in our environment configuration. So run this again. Oh, this fails. Oh, it does it sometimes. There we go. And now we see that it's failing. We can try something else to fetch the button. So the button is currently not found. We can just go ahead and use a different locator strategy. There we go. So let me see. Let me just use this in our test. Instead of uppercase, let's do this and see if that works. So this allows us now, testing locally allows us now to faster iterate. And sauce is really, connected in your CI/CD. There we go. So we now verified that we press on the sign up. It went all so fast, but I can add a pause to just show that we did exactly what we're supposed to do. You can add a browser pause and do 3 seconds or 4 seconds, and it should show you now. There, the registration error field shows, and verifies that, this form detects if all inputs are verified. For the next one,
Christian, sorry to pause you, and show everyone what would it look like if the test failed. So for example, I don't know, in the expect, maybe change the string we're expecting and show what a failed test would look like.
Okay, let's say we don't click on the sign up button. We would not expect this field, this error batch to show up. So if I run this now, you will see that if you keep looking in my terminal, you will see that WebDriver will continuously try to fetch the element, but it will fail. It retries a couple of times just to make sure that there's no delays in it. And if it really fails after, in this case, as a default value, 10 seconds, you see this error message that, and that this element is supposed to be present, but it received that it was not present. And it gives you a point in the stack trace, which is important, where you can find this test failing or this assertion. So in this case, it's the test end-to-end. And on line 10, the stack trace seems to be a little bit off, but you can see it here. So you see it get a stack trace. It gives you the location where it failed, and it gives you an error message that basically tells you which element or which expectation has been not fulfilled.
Awesome.
Okay.
And what if we wanted to run this cross-browser, this test? How would we do that?
So cross-browser, all we need to do for local is just adding another capability. In this case, let's say we want to run it on Firefox and Safari. I'm on Mac, I have Safari installed. That's all I need. And the same would run for Sauce, would work when running on Sauce Labs. You just add more capabilities to it. You can now see it runs all these browsers in parallel. So a bunch of windows pop up on my machine. And Safari is sometimes a little bit slow and sometimes a bit flaky. But you can see now you get 3 reports back for Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. And we can do the same for Sauce as well. We just add these capabilities to our Sauce configuration and can even add mobile and mobile tests, mobile and capabilities. And I recommend Sauce is a great tool that is called the platform configurator. You can go on there, and it basically allows you to pick a platform on all their supported environments. Let's say Mac, or let's say you want to test on an Android real device. You want to, a Google Pixel, and you want to test in a browser using Node.js. You get all these capabilities now from Sauce, and you can just basically copy paste them into your configuration. And ideally, Sauce will find the right capability for you. Awesome. So let's do another scenario. In this case, let's say we enter an email, and it should give me, let's say we enter an email and forget the password. That will we have the same, but let's say we do 123, 123. So we'll tell that the password should be at least 6 characters. Let's do this scenario. So for that, go back into our test, and I can almost write this test blind because I know the accessibility IDs. Should fail if password is too short. So we do the same again. This time we expect that the error message will have this text. And before we enter, so let me just find out I think it was email, the accessibility ID. We look at the accessibility ID, it's email, and there's a command called setValue, and we say fuba@gmail.com. We do the same for password, and we call it 1, 2, 3. And password, the other one is confirm. Confirm password 1, 2, 3, and it should fail because the password is too short. Let's run this. Actually, let's remove all these browsers. Just test for one on local. That's usually good enough. Move faster. Let's see. Invalid state. So something that is flaky. Yeah, something is flaky here. Invalid element state means that we cannot, it's an error in Chrome, and that means that we cannot access the element, which is called email. For that, we can have a little helper that waits for us until the element is clickable. Let's see if that will remove the problem. I think in my solution, that was supposed to work. No, it's the same thing. Let's just try maybe. So one problem of those is that, there might be a different element. We think that this is being fetched, but maybe there's a different element that has the same accessibility name. So you can do other tricks using a different selector. And this time I would take a CSS selector where I say, okay, I want to have an input selected that has type email. And let's see if that will actually fetch the element. But that's a common mistake.
If that doesn't work, I wonder if we can add a unique data test ID attribute to that component. I mean, we're in the code already. It's super easy.
I could do that. Yeah, let's do this when I find the register form. It's pages, register. Good call. So here we have our email. We can add a data minus test ID, email, do the same for password, and password confirm. Let's just use those. So input, data, test ID, email, and just use them for them all. Password. Let's run this. There we go, test passing. Yeah, this is if you think you find the right element, you sometimes don't, and then these errors can be very confusing. So just make sure that you really fetch the element that you want to. Let's do one more test where we just verify that we have a valid email and a long enough password, but the password does not match. So this is almost very easy. We can copy the existing past and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this one be 6, 5, 3, 2, 2, 1. Let's verify that, and then we do a last test where we confirm that the actual registration works. Very fast, within 2.3 seconds, we cover all these 3 test cases, end to end. So let's do should successfully. Make sure that you update your test names or labels so that you can identify what's going, which tests are you running. So what happens if we actually register a user? So 6, 5, 3. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very secure password. Sign up, and then we get this page where we get this text which is very apparent. It's an H1 that has this text. And so the selector that you can use is, you can say, I expect an H1 to have this text. Okay, let's click that. And that should verify that this element is present and that we are on the page where the registration was successful. So let's run that. And this should then...
And Christian, after, I wonder if we can take a few minutes and talk about why people might want to use WebdriverIO and Sauce Labs.
Sure.
What are the advantages?
So one test is failing now. I wonder which one. Okay, this one. Oh, I still have the wrong password. So yeah, they have a lot of test frameworks around, a lot of platforms. I think it all comes down on what your expectation and what your requirements are as a software company and to your project. The big difference of using WebDriver as opposed to, tools like Cypress, Playwright, and others is that with WebDriver and Sauce Labs, you are able to test in the environment that your users are using. WebDriver uses a web standard called WebDriver that allows you to test in real browser, not just browser engines, and that can be a big important piece because the engine is not the same. A Chromium engine is not the same as Chrome browser, nor is a WebKit application not the same as Safari. And so with those, with WebDriver, you can actually test on these real browsers. And with Sauce Labs, you can scale this up. I can just, as a demonstration, test this on 12 different capabilities. And when I run this, it runs them all in parallel. And this is all, not set up, Sauce. And nothing is needed. No additional features need to be make available. It's all built in that you can test in parallel on different capabilities, not only browsers, but also mobile devices in terms of like a real device or an emulator or simulator. It can cover all the devices that your users use. And so in this case, I'm now testing on 10 different capabilities on Sauce.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is one of my favorite features about WebdriverIO is if you have the need to test on mobile emulators, simulators, or even real devices, WebdriverIO is one of the few testing libraries that can do that. For example, Cypress doesn't do that and Playwright doesn't do that. So if you do have a need to do like web testing on your real mobile devices, WebdriverIO with Sauce Labs is a perfect combination for that. And then if you want to do even native mobile testing, WebdriverIO can do that as well.
That's correct. So after a while, I hope the test finish.
Maybe pull up the Sauce Labs UI and show them what would be happening right now in there.
Yeah, I can actually log into Sauce Labs. Many of them are failing. That needs to be inspected. So it's always, it's always good if it works on your local machine, but sometimes running it on a different machine will unveil you some errors that happen during your automation phase. So I was wondering why most of them, most of them fail when it comes to registration, I feel like. So WebDriver always gives you a job to check out. And so we can just, see what's going on, why the registration failed. And I think I know why. And the reason for that is we all use the same email to register. And so now we see, since we all did that in parallel, we now see that probably the users already has been created. So in this case, user already exists. See, those are issues that come up when you test with high parallel capabilities. And in order to fix that, all we need to do is in our last test use a unique identifier, and we can do that. For instance, you can add any random number. In this case, I will use the worker ID. I think, actually, no, let's just do math.random. Gives us a random number to the username. Let's just run this again, and now it should pass it. Actually, before we start, some of the nifty things we can do with Sauce is create a build. So if you run this in CI/CD, you can define Sauce option, and you can define a build that we don't need. And so in your capabilities, you can define the Sauce options for all the capabilities that you use. And now Sauce will group them into a single build. Makes you easier to understand where, which build is currently running, for which pull request, for which commit. And you can all see that in the build platform and the platform unautomated builds. And so in a second, a build with this number should be started. I already see a bunch of tests that run in parallel on all different devices. And now I have my build here. It tells me that 9 tests are running currently. And so they do their thing. I think I've set max instance to 1. I can basically go endless. I've seen people running 100 tests on their local machine. At this point, it becomes a little bit more difficult because the CPU is doing a lot of input-output. But with Sauce, I remember at the times where I was working at Sauce, we had customers that were running up to 500 tests in parallel, which has speed up their builds dramatically. So let's see how our test is doing. Now all tests have been passing. That's awesome. You see them all here on all these different environments. And now we can see that we've been using a random name at the end, which make our test path. I think that's all we had for you in terms of prompts. Nikolay, do you have any questions left?
Yeah, I was going to say, just comment on one of your points was that, yeah, that's one of the easiest ways to scale automated testing and get feedback is to just run more tests in parallel. But that's assuming that your test data strategy is set up correctly. As you saw, Christian encountered this. If we have the right test data strategy, we can easily run more in parallel just by running across more processes and so on, or more combinations if necessary. So it's a powerful way to get faster feedback.
That's correct.
I love this. This was amazing.
Oh, thanks, Jen.
Yeah, for sure. I will say we definitely do have a lot of questions for you too.
Oh,
so let's dive in. All right. Testing with Sauce Labs looks pretty easy. What other features should people know about?
Well, the goal of Sauce Labs is to be a platform for all tests, so where all tests go. So yeah, of course, what you all saw are end-to-end browser tests. You did not see mobile native tests, but you can also do that. You can do API testing. You can do accessibility testing, front-end performance testing. Didn't see that. You can do that with WebdriverIO as well. Accessibility testing, you can do that as well. Let me see what else I'm missing. You can run also numerous other tools if you like. We do have Cypress support and Playwright and so on. And then there's also analytics as well. That's the cool thing about it is all of this goes into our analytics that will then give you a higher level view of what's going on with your testing. And you can drill in to that information and make appropriate decisions to impact your builds and commits and so on.
I feel like you just like led into the other one of the other questions, but before I move on, anything to add?
Not from my side.
Okay. All right. Because it's literally what sets you apart from other testing solutions, but you said that they also integrate with like Playwright and Cypress. So like what sets you apart too?
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to be able, as I said, is to be a platform for all tests. So you bring your tooling of choice to us, and we run your tests and gather all the information and create a single view that will allow you to understand what's going on with your automated testing. So that's probably what sets us apart from everyone else.
I think the frameworks you mentioned are frameworks that allow you to do automated testing. Sauce Labs is just the platform that you can run your automated tests on. It provides you all the capabilities, all the browsers, and gives you information and useful additional features.
Very cool. And apologies for everybody that the doggo is barking in the background, if you can hear her.
They only bark during live streams.
It's true. It's true.
They plan it.
Yes, yes. She is 13 and she is a bulldog pit bull mix, super adorable. And she's going deaf. So she can't hear anything.
Oh.
So she's like started barking even more, which I'm just like, whatever. She's just part of the background. I love it. All right, next question. Can I easily integrate Sauce Labs into my CI/CD pipeline, and what does that look like?
Yes, you can. So as you saw from Christian, really all it is having a separate configuration and a Sauce Connect that can talk to your application running on localhost. And so then you would just run it through any CI tool, just as you normally would. With WebdriverIO, you saw Christian running WebdriverIO console commands to run tests. If you had Cypress, you'd run Cypress commands and so on. And so that would just talk to our Sauce Labs cloud. Again, as long as you have the Sauce Connect, your username and access key, everything else would work as normal.
Groovy. All right. How to avoid adding user data in live environments, but having the need of testing if the login works.
Christian, you want to grab that one? I've been talking a lot.
No, you're the expert.
All right. Great question. So test data management, important for testing. And when you say live environments, I'm going to assume that you're talking about in a similar situation like Christian just had, right? You can, of course, do it on localhost. You can then maybe push it up to like a dev environment where you do have a real database. So the ideal test data strategy for automated testing is you ideally have like an API that you can use to generate test users and test data. You utilize that in your tests, and then you delete it afterwards. That way, you keep your databases clean. You have dynamic data on the fly, as you saw Christian face when he was trying to do stuff in parallel. So that's the ideal strategy. Not always possible. As always, it depends on your environment. But if you are starting from scratch and are thinking about testability in mind, keep it in mind that enabling this kind of capability will ultimately make your software better and easier to test.
Yeah, and what WebdriverIO will give you, allows you to have hooks that run before, example given, all the tests start. So that would allow you to, for instance, to create a user just for the test build that you can use to test the login. I think I have that in the solution where I test the login page and I create this a login user using the Supabase package as part of the test.
Very cool. And now this is just making me want to go try it out with Ivan, because we having managed databases, I'm like, oh, wait, what can we set up with there? That sounds fun. All right, next question. Do you have advice for setting up go live testing for deployment to production?
I can tell you sure what the question entails.
I'm assuming, is this like leading towards having quality gates in your CI pipeline? That's the angle that I'm going to tackle it from. I would say try to do it in small stages, meaning like maybe you run your fastest tests first and your slowest tests after. So maybe start with some unit tests. If that passes, then run some component tests. If that passes, move on to your larger like end-to-end tests. And what that allows you to do is get the fastest feedback possible, right? We're all developers, always trying to move faster, ship code to production faster. So the faster the feedback loop, usually the better our experience is. And so that allows us to prioritize for the faster feedback loop and the better experience. And then start with just a little. You don't have to like tackle an entire automation strategy all at once. Start with a little bit, make sure it works and it's providing you value, and then continue to grow it as you see gaps. What do you think, Christian?
Sounds about right to me.
And I think this next one is like important just to know, so we understand when we are testing it ourselves. Do local tests also consume credits?
No, not for Sauce Labs. If you test locally and you use your own browser, there's no connection happening to Sauce Labs, and nothing will be charged or anything.
Very cool. And second to the last question I have for you, if we're thinking about like moderate pricing for solo freelancers, like given the choices more designed for major corporate project companies, is it possible to give something for more like freelancers?
Yeah, I will bring that to our product team, and certainly we want to make it easier for smaller teams to be able to test in Sauce Labs. We're actually working on a initiative. I'm part of the community team, so we're working on creating a Sauce Labs for open source initiative. So that'll be a start, and then we'll go from there.
That's exciting. All right, and last question. What if user data can't be deleted due to law restrictions? What do you do?
That's interesting. Are we talking about test data, users that can't be deleted due to law restrictions? If so, I've never encountered such an issue. I wouldn't know what to do in that.
I feel like I've almost run into the opposite, where we have to delete stuff because of law restrictions.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe like medical or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, for test data, it seems a little bit weird. I mean, I guess maybe there could be some kind of rule. In that case, I would say have a totally separate test environment where you can fill it up with whatever data you want, and just know that at some point your database is going to fill up and you're going to need to grow it. All
right. Well, that is all of the questions that we have for the two of you today. And thank you both for joining. I'm excited to see what you guys are going to be up to next, and also looking into more of Sauce Labs. So thank you both for joining today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Jen. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.